TomoNews presents Demolitions and Collapses. Construction site in China's Manhattan collapses. A dramatic video captured by workers shows the collapse of a building site at a multi-billion-dollar construction project in Shenzhen, China. The video shows a wall slowly collapsing and dragging part of the construction site into a pit. No injuries were reported from the incident, and the collapse was reportedly caused by soft soil around the site. The $45 billion construction project, located in Shenzhen's Qianhai district, is only an hour from Hong Kong. The project is part of a planned international finance and commercial district some are calling the Manhattan of the Pearl River Delta. The Chinese government hopes it will rival and even replace Hong Kong's Central District.
Demolitions are pretty epic to watch, but don't forget, they're also dangerous. A safety perimeter of 1,000 feet was set up around the PG&E scheduled demolition of a closed steam power plant in Bakersfield. At around 6 a.m., many curious onlookers were already in place, ready for the exciting destruction of the facility. Little did they know they were setting themselves up for serious injury. Upon exploding, shards of metal and debris shot out every which way. Clearly, the safety perimeter wasn't set far enough, and exploding debris hit several onlookers. One man was struck in a leg by a piece of metal, resulting in doctors having to amputate the leg completely. Epic to watch, but for this man, probably not worth it.
Unpaid construction workers take chainsaw to building site. A pair of builders down under used chainsaws to rip through a partially built house under construction and filmed it on video as revenge for not being paid on time. The video posted to Facebook on the Uptrend Engineering and Construction page starts with the image of a chainsaw and reads, "Builders who don't want to pay invoices." It then cuts away and shows one construction worker slicing through several wooden supports throughout a housing framework. The caption, "We'll learn the hard way," then appears on the screen. The footage then shows a second construction worker ripping through the house in a similar fashion. It looks like both these guys hadn't been paid on time by their boss, so they did what any reasonable person would do and chainsawed everything instead. Wonder when they're gonna get paid now. Man demolishes wife's house without telling her. 48-year-old James Ryan of Middleton, New York, demolished the house his wife, Diane Andryshak, owned without telling her on Monday morning. According to Andryshak, the two were neither having a fight nor were they arguing on the morning she left. Ryan reportedly wanted to apply for a demolition permit, but the government office was closed due to it being Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Ryan then rented an excavator and tore down the house with all their belongings inside. Concerned neighbors called the police, and officers quickly alerted utilities companies to turn off gas and electricity. Andryshak came home to an empty lot and was justifiably shocked to see what was left of her house. According to Ryan, the foundation of the house was completely beyond repair, and that's why he tore it down. Ryan was charged with criminal mischief and released on a $300 bail. He's due in court on January 30th. But the reason why Ryan went all Wreck-It Ralph on the house with all their belongings still inside remains a mystery.
Boiler demolition dust storm blinds highway drivers. In Linkou to the west of Taipei, electric utility Taipower was demolishing one of their old boiler buildings. Robert Han, the owner of the dashcam video where you can see the building as it goes down, was only one of many highway drivers who were shocked by the boom and doom of the building as demolition experts took it to the ground. All the vehicles on the highway screeched to a halt as the vibrations hit the highway, and a huge 60-meter high dust storm cloud envelops part of the road. Many of the drivers complained that the company should have checked weather predictions and wind conditions and close the highway if necessary. The dust storm blinded many drivers and could have caused serious injuries and traffic accidents. Taipower and the demolition company they hired to take down the old boiler building have been fined $31,000 for endangering the public. The demolition company has promised to improve their safety and check procedures for future demolitions.
Shocking video shows 9-story building in China suddenly collapse. Around 11:30 in the morning on Wednesday, a 9-story apartment complex in the Chinese city of Guiyang suddenly collapsed. This terrifying footage shows the implosion of the building from the ground up. The building is believed to have collapsed because of the landslide caused by heavy rainfall. City government officials said 98 residents and people who live nearby have been evacuated, but rescuers are still trying to find 16 people who may be trapped inside. The military and police are at the site along with rescue workers. They have traced the cell phone signals of 15 missing people to the site. The fate of the 16th individual is still unknown. Landslides occur on mountain slopes when the land becomes unstable after an earthquake or heavy rainfall. Unfortunately, this is quite common in southern China. According to local news agencies, 5 more people are believed to be missing, bringing the total to 21 missing people.
Building collapse in China kills at least 22. 4 residential buildings in the Chinese city of Wenzhou collapsed on Monday, killing at least 22 people. The buildings were mostly occupied by migrant workers. The buildings that collapsed in China on Monday were only supposed to be 3 stories tall, but were illegally constructed to be 6 stories. The construction materials included mostly concrete bricks, wooden sticks, and boards, but lacked any steel structures. According to China Daily, continued rainfall in Wenzhou may have contributed to the collapse, as well as the unstable foundation. A neighbor living opposite to the collapsed buildings told Beijing News that his room shook violently just moments before the crash. He then ran to the window just in time to see the buildings collapse entirely. The collapsed buildings are in a neighborhood that local government and property developers have been trying to demolish and renew since 2014. Some residents reportedly refused to move as they were trying to negotiate higher compensations from the local government.
City bulldozes half of a house after wife sells her share. Divorces often get messy, particularly when it comes to settling property and who gets what. But this is one of the more jaw-dropping stories ever. Luis Garado dos Santos, age 52, came home from work one day to find half of his house demolished after his ex-wife sold her share. The couple lived in what used to be a 4-bedroom apartment on the edge of the Olympic Park site for next year's Games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Unfortunately, their home lies inside the planned Olympic Park and is one among many homes which have been marked for demolition. The government is offering compensation deals to homeowners, but the offers are way below market price. Although the two continue to live together, Luis and his ex-wife have been divorced for 10 years, which is why the government was forced to offer them separate compensation deals for the same house. Luis's wife decided to take the government's offer and sold her half of the house, assuming the government would wait until they were able to buy Luis out before demolishing the property. As you can tell, they thought wrong. Luis returned home one day to discover that the government had bulldozed exactly half of the house, the half his ex had been compensated for. The demolition also destroyed the water and electricity, so Luis, his daughter, and his grandson have gone days without a shower. Luis says he's incredibly disappointed and angry. He didn't want to move, but now he'll have to since he's only got half a house left. He was excited and proud of his city for winning the right to host the Olympics. Now he just hates the Olympics. Luis also points out, "It's not fair, but what can I do? There's one rule for the rich and another for the poor."
New York building collapse kills 2, injures dozens. 2 buildings in New York collapsed at 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday due to an explosion believed to be caused by a gas leak, killing 2 people and injuring more than 2 dozen. The 2 buildings were located on a largely residential block at East 116th Street and Park Avenue in East Harlem. The blast occurred 15 minutes after a resident in an adjacent building called Con Edison to complain of a gas odor. Preliminary information indicated there was an explosion caused by a gas leak. Residential units in the 2 buildings collapsed onto a church and piano store below. The explosion blew out windows in nearby buildings. Thick white smoke billowed from the buildings as firefighters and rescue workers arrived. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said a number of people were still missing.
In a spectacular bureaucratic cluster, a Fort Worth, Texas home was demolished on July the 12th. The wrong home. The 3-bedroom house had been in David Underwood's family for decades. The city hired contractors to raise a decrepit house at the 9700 block on Watercrest Drive. The thing is, the crew were given the wrong address, the one to a perfectly good vacant house next door. And so the machines went to work on Mr. Underwood's dead grandmother's house. A neighbor, aware of the scheduled demolition, saw machines tearing into the wrong house and tried to alert officials, but it was too late. The next day, Mr. Underwood and his wife went to check on the place they planned to fix up and retire in. But as they rounded the corner, explaining the snafu, city official Brandon Bennett said simply, "A mistake was made." Well, no Brandon. Underwood, to his credit, is pretty zen about it all.
I see so much around here that people that need help and have less that it's an accident, and let's just do what's right and move on.
A building collapsed on an adjacent thrift store in Philadelphia Wednesday morning during demolition work, killing at least 6 people. The 4-story building had been under demolition for weeks, with workers inside the building knocking bricks off. One wall collapsed at around 10:45 a.m., sending bricks and debris into the store. It is still unknown how many people were inside, but so far 5 women and 1 man were found dead in the rubble. Philadelphia's mayor was quoted by the New York Times as saying the search and rescue will continue until everything that's possible to uncover is uncovered.
Kowloon walled city, once the most densely populated place on Earth. April 2014 marked the 20th anniversary of the demolition of the Kowloon walled city. A largely ungoverned slum, once considered the densest human settlement on Earth. Also known as the City of Darkness, it housed around 50,000 inhabitants in 300 buildings, crammed together into a tiny space that followed no rules or regulations. This video recreates the historical process that led to the creation and eventual disappearance of this unique city. The history of the Kowloon walled city can be traced back to China's Song dynasty. In 960 AD, the original 6-acre plot of land began to be used as an outpost to regulate the salt trade. Little changed until 1810, when China established a small coastal fort and years later surrounded it with a defensive wall. The fortifications, however, failed to prevent the British from occupying the settlement in 1899, more than 50 years after they colonized Hong Kong. When Hong Kong came under Japanese occupation during the Second World War, the wall was raised, and the stones were used to expand nearby Kai Tak Airport. The settlement returned to Chinese rule in 1945. By 1947, more than 2,000 refugees wishing to live under Chinese rule had flooded the city. As Britain ended up adopting a hands-off approach, it became a haven for those who wished to live outside the law. By 1950, the city came under control of the Chinese mafia, known as the Triads, and illegal activities started to flourish. In the 1960s, a building boom occurred, and the walled city quickly turned into the infamous, sprawling, crowded, and anarchic city that it is remembered for today. Buildings constructed with no regard for safety standards gave shelter to a fast-growing population, but as the city grew taller, daylight was gradually blocked out, earning it the nickname City of Darkness. The dramatic increase of inhabitants, which grew 5-fold in 40 years, put more pressure on the inadequate infrastructure and caused the squalid living conditions to deteriorate further. The city was so densely populated that Hong Kong and New York today would feel empty in comparison. For the 50,000 people living in the city in the 1990s, only 8 standpipes provided potable water. Water also came from wells, but people complained it was murky, foul-smelling, and contained soot-like particles. Living conditions were squalid, but the rent was cheap. At just 35 Hong Kong dollars, about $4 today, a month, which made up for the cramped and dirty spaces, patchy or non-existent electricity, and no garbage collection. Garbage was usually dumped on the building's rooftop. The city was especially attractive for dentists and manufacturers who could practice without license, the triads who could run brothels, gambling houses and drug dens, and visitors who could find dog meat to eat, which was illegal in Hong Kong. After almost 50 years of effective anarchy, the city became an embarrassment for the British, who started to tear it down in 1993. The demolition was completed by April 1994. Residents received compensation and the site was transformed into a Qing dynasty-style garden. Despite the squalid living conditions, many former residents fondly remember the walled city. They considered it their home, their community, and although it was undoubtedly poor, many of them thought of it as generally happy.